and welcome to this Influencity tutorial. In this video, we're going to go over the influencer KPIs that you should be looking at when deciding on the next influencer to use in your campaign. Now, to show you this, I'm working within the Influencity platform, and in particular within the Influencers product. The Influencers product is where the influencer relationship management tool can be used. This tool is basically a one-stop shop where you can analyze influencers, communicate influencers, and keep track of all of those small but important details regarding your collaboration. Now, on this overview page, I have a lot of information. First of all, I have the number of profiles and the number of influencers. However, you might be noticing that the number of profiles is actually different than the number of influencers. This is because in Influencity, we actually differentiate between profiles, which are social media accounts such as a TikTok channel or a YouTube channel, and influencers, who are the actual content creators who run the account. So influencers, you can think of them as like a contact, because you would add them to your address book, you would eventually reach out, and then finally you would negotiate a contract and pay them their salary. Now, there are more profiles because it's common these days for one influencer to have multiple social media accounts. Maybe, for example, an influencer posts long-form content on YouTube, short reels on TikTok, and then carousels and short videos on Instagram. For this reason, it's helpful to have one influencer page where you can associate multiple social media profiles and see all of their relevant KPIs in just one place. Let's take a look at how this works by going over here to the last profiles added. I'm going to click on this profile that I recently added, and as you can see, I have a lot of great profile performance data. However, to really complete this picture that I have of this influencer, I'm going to want to associate this profile to an influencer. To do this, I'm going to go over here to this plus button, go to Add To, and Influencer. Now in this list, I have all the influencers that I've added to my IRM. Again, think of them as like contacts in my address book. And since this is a new influencer, I'm going to go to Add New, and it's going to ask me to add some contact information. Now, if you don't know their phone number or their email, don't worry. The most important thing is to put an influencer alias. So here it's automatically plugged in her handle, but since I know that her name is Natalie and she likes to be called that, I'm going to save Natalie as her influencer alias. Now this is important because later you can use this alias to plug her name into bulk emails and stuff like that. So make sure you actually save the name that you know this influencer likes to be called instead of like cool photography influencer or something like that. Now I'm going to click save, and you'll see how now this influencer appears on my IRM overview page. So now that Natalie has a page, I'm going to click on it and I'll show you the complete page. Now here's all the information, and let's start on the left by looking at this email address. Now, if you'll remember, just a second ago, I didn't know her email, so I left that page blank. However, since I've now associated her YouTube or her Instagram page, since her Instagram page had a public email address on it, this public email address has now been added to her influencer page, and now we have it in one handy location, so I can reach out to her directly from this page, or I can include her in larger bulk email sets and stuff like that. Now, another interesting thing we have here on the left are related profiles. So I just associated her Instagram profile. However, I see here that she also has a YouTube channel. So if I were to click here on the handle, I could actually open her channel in a separate window and check it out and see if I like the content. And if I like it, I can go to Add Related Profile, and over here, I can select Yes, Analyze. Analyzing the profile is that extra step you take to extract the KPIs, and it comes at the cost of one monthly analysis. So if I accept this cost and click Save, in just a moment, I'll see that her YouTube profile appears up here at the top. So if I go to this tab called Social Networks, now I have two social networks to flip through, and I can see her KPIs for both. Now, let's start by looking at her Instagram. So up here, I can see that I have two options, from followers and from likers. What's the difference? Well, followers are basically the people who have taken that extra step to follow her on Instagram. So these are the people who will automatically see her stories and her new posts from their homepage. Likers, on the other hand, are people who do not follow her, but maybe her posts have appeared in their general feeds, and while scrolling through, they decided to give her a like. So with likers, the relationship is it's a bit less strong. However, I think it's important to look at likers because it gives you an idea of the people that she's reaching, and it gives you an idea of how impactful her content might be, right? By even looking at it for a second, this user has decided, okay, this picture is cool, I'm gonna like it. So followers and likers can be used for different purposes. Let's start with followers and scroll downwards. Now up here on the top, we have the more global metrics, such as the number of followers on her account, the number of people that she's following, the average interactions, and the engagement rate. Now, average interactions is just the number of likes, comments, and replies on one post, whereas the engagement rate is the same number, however, it's divided by her number of followers. Now, why is this distinction important? Because average interactions could be very high for a mega influencer who has millions of followers who are constantly liking their posts. However, that could give you kind of a distorted impression because maybe a micro influencer actually has a much higher engagement, but their number of average interactions is much lower just because they have less interactions because they have less followers. So I like to look at the engagement rate because it gives me a percentage that's easily comparable. And this comparison doesn't depend on the number of followers that the influencer has. Now here in the middle, we have earned media value. This is actually an Influencity value that we calculate by looking at likes and comments and kind of comparing it to the general market that's out there. So this number that we see right here, you can think of it as the equivalent advertising value. Should you compare a sponsored post to this influencer to this amount of paid ads? So one post with this influence on Instagram would be worth this amount in paid ads. And this isn't a suggestion for how much you should actually pay the influencer, but rather it's good when you're comparing profiles. Say you have like top 3 profiles and you're trying to decide which one to work with, and lots of the other KPIs are similar. If one has a noticeably higher earned media value, then it means that the ROI on working with this influencer could actually be much higher. Now scrolling down, we have follower quality. This is the percentage of this influencer's followers who are quality, meaning that they're real people who you could possibly convert into customers, and doubtful followers who are either bots or real users who just haven't logged on for a really long time. So we call these inactive users because they're not actually going online to interact with this influencer's content. So she has a 74.3% follower quality, which isn't great, but it's not bad. I like to say that when you're looking at influencer KPIs, it's important to get a holistic picture because not every influencer is going to have perfect KPIs for every single measurement. So it's a good idea to look at them as a whole and then make your decision as to whether if you want to work with them or not. Now, average activity split is the number of views, likes, and comments that they get on average for their post. So if you were to work with this influencer, this is kind of the numbers that you would expect. Down here for engagement rate, it's the same number, however, it's put on a scale to compare this influencer's engagement with an influencer of a same community size. So as you can see, she has an excellent engagement rate that might make up for a less than stellar follower quality. Now down here in profile evolution, you can see how this profile has grown over time. Now for number of followers, she has lost a few followers, however, things seem quite steady. What I would look for in this particular metric is to see if there is a drastic uptick or downtick. For example, if from one day to another she were to have 5,000 new followers, this could mean 1, maybe she hopped on a trend and lots of people are following her profile, or 2, it's a possibility that maybe this influencer has bought profiles to falsely inflate her following. So it could be one of those. If she were to lose a bunch of followers from one day to another, this could indicate that maybe she's done something unpopular and is facing kind of some backlash. This is the number of profiles that this influencer is following. Now, in the influencer world, it can be a common practice to go out and follow thousands of other profiles with the hope that they follow you back. And then the next day, stop following everyone, so you have a very high follower count and you're not following a lot of people. This is a popular tactic, and unfortunately, it is quite common. And looking at this metric is a good way to see if this influencer has done that. In this case, the number of people that she's following has only increased slightly, so I don't think this is the case for her. And over here in likes, we see kind of an up and down pattern, but the overall trend is positive, which is a good sign. Likes also, they tend to go up and down because some posts might be more on trend than others. Down here we have her interests. Her top interests are electronics and computers, although she's also interested in clothing, art and design, etc. As for mentions, her top mention, so the top account that she's mentioning is actually her personal account. She's also mentioning the Canon USA account and the Photoshop account. And over here in hashtags, these are the hashtags that she would use in her captions. You can see that number one is ad, which is a common practice for influencers. If you have a sponsored post, especially in the United States, you have to label it with ad. So maybe this indicates that she has a lot of sponsored posts. We also see hashtags for Adobe Partners, Adobe Firefly, Canon Creator. And these hashtags might indicate that she's part of like an influencer program for these brands. And then down here in Influencer Brand Affinity, these are either brands that appear in her content because she likes them, or again, could indicate a professional partnership. So for example, maybe if she uploads a selfie, a mirror selfie holding her iPhone and the Apple logo is visible, then maybe Apple would appear in her brand affinity for that reason. However, as we see above, she interacts with Adobe a lot, so perhaps this could indicate a professional partnership. Down here, we have profile lookalikes, which are other social media profiles that post similar content. So maybe their focus is also on cameras, photography, a little bit of art and design. If you're looking for profiles similar to Natalie's, then you can just click on their handle and that will open their profile in another window and you can take a look at the aesthetic and stuff like that. And over here on the right, you have two complementary metrics, which are the average interactions for this account and the number of followers that they have. Now, as we scroll down, we start to get into the audience demographics. These are the followers that this influencer is impacting with all of her posts. So as we can see here, this is the age breakdown, and you can also see that the colors indicate the gender. So her main group of followers is between the ages of 18 and 24, so kind of Gen Z, and 40% of them are women. So if your target age group is Gen Zers who are female, then this would be a good option for you. She also has quite a few followers in the millennial age range and also quite a few teenagers. Over here we have the gender breakdown once again. And down here we have top countries. So the majority of her audience is in the United States. She also has a large portion in France. And then down here things get interesting because we see Indonesia and India. Now these could be botted followers. However, there is a trend in some countries to have kind of bot farms or follower farms, which are basically schemes where influencers can buy a number of followers to, again, artificially inflate their following. And these accounts tend to be from certain countries. I think India is one, Turkey is one. I'm not sure if Indonesia is. So looking at these countries is kind of a good way to see if there are any red flags. It could be that her content is just really popular in Indonesia and in India. But again, that's why it's important to look at all the metrics before making a final decision. Now down here, I have these three metrics because this is an Instagram account. So since it's an Instagram account, I get insight into the top cities of her audience, their top language, and also their ethnicity. Down here, I also have audience reachability, which is something that I like to use because it gives you an idea of if your sponsored post will actually arrive at the intended audience. So ideally, you would want 50% of her audience to be in these two columns. This means that at least 50% of her followers follow less than 1,000 accounts. Think of it this way. If users are following less than 1,000 accounts, a sponsored post from you is more likely to appear in their feeds, right? Because there's not so much competing content. However, if most of her audience were following over 1,500 accounts, well, then it's almost impossible that your sponsored content would make their way to them because there's just so much content in their feeds that they probably wouldn't see it and maybe your money would be wasted. Now over here we have audience interests. As we can see, this lines up fairly well with what she has above. They're also interested in cameras, clothes, art and design. If you click on this little arrow, you can see all of the interests. And down here are the audience brand affinity. So for example, maybe lots of them are fans of Game of Thrones, maybe lots of them have put up hashtags or location tags for Coachella. This just gives you an idea of kind of the brands that they interact with on a daily basis. Now, audience lookalikes are interesting because these are influencers who maybe post about a different type of content. Maybe they're more into travel or fashion. However, for whatever reason, they attract followers of a similar demographic. So maybe again, kind of Gen Z women with an interest in photography. So audience lookalikes could be a helpful tool if you really want to focus in on people of the same demographic, and the actual content type doesn't matter to you that much, because you'd be focusing not necessarily on the same users, but on users with similar demographics. Now, notable followers is also interesting because they can really help you make your content reach a wider audience. A notable follower is basically a profile or a user who is considered an influencer in their own right because they have more than 1,000 followers and they have public profiles. So since these users are considered important by the Instagram algorithm, if they were to like or comment on one of your sponsored posts with this influencer, well then Instagram would kind of help you share this information, and it's likely that more people will see this content in their news feeds even if they're not following this influencer. So notable followers, again, great for making an echo effect and for making your content go further. Finally, down here, we have her top organic posts and her top sponsored posts. These are posts that have been sponsored by a brand. It looks like maybe a photography brand. And that's it for her Instagram statistics. Now, again, if I wanted to check out her YouTube, I would just flip right here to her YouTube channel. And as you can see, it is quite similar. The layout is quite similar, and actually she has a much higher follower quality on YouTube than she did on Instagram. And again, she has that really solid engagement rate. So the advantage of creating an influencer page is that you have all this information all on one page, and it makes it really easy to, one, look at all the KPIs on one page, and then kind of get a fuller picture of who this influencer is, and if you actually want to reach out to them and to try incorporating them into your campaigns. That's it. If you have any requests for our next tutorials, feel free to leave us a comment in the comments below, and we look forward to seeing you in our next videos.